Hi, this is Joel Johnson. Before we start talking today about estate planning, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel, and also, just as importantly, click on the little red bell. That will help you get notifications anytime I add videos, anytime we upload videos to this channel. Again, this channel is all about estate planning, tax planning, retirement planning, how to give you confidence in what lies ahead, how to reduce the fear and the uncertainty. Today, we're talking about estate planning and, quite frankly, why have an estate plan? I remember when I was much younger, we were starting out as a young family, and I used to hear this term estate planning, and it just sounded so sophisticated. It sounded like only rich people would need to have an estate plan, and that is not the case at all. It's not just for the rich. An estate planning allows you to make sure that your values are communicated, your assets end up where they're supposed to, reduces all kinds of drama within the family. So we're going to talk about some of these things today. So let's talk about that. What I mentioned earlier, is estate planning just for the rich? Well, estate planning definitely is for the rich, but it's also for anybody that has any assets, or even if somebody does not have assets, anybody that wants to have a level of certainty and control over their future if they cannot make decisions for themselves. Remember, estate planning means that you have planned out your situation, not just financially, so that should bad things happen, a disability, the inability to make financial decisions on your own, maybe a nursing home situation, anything like that, if anything like that happens, you have decided ahead of time what the plan is. Think of it as control. Again, you've written the real rule book, and whoever the trustee is, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, but whoever that trustee is has to follow that rule book that you created. So that is why estate planning is not just for the rich, it is for everybody. Doesn't mean it has to be complicated, doesn't mean it has to be really sophisticated. It just means that you need to have an estate plan. What are the financial benefits of an estate plan? Because you're going to spend money doing an estate plan, right? Unless you just go online and do the old cheapo will, for $70 or maybe for free, which I advise against, I heavily advise against. You're going to spend some money having the proper attorney, having somebody do the planning for you. So what are the financial benefits? Well, it's really threefold, and when I do my seminars, we talk about this in much more detail. You have fee and tax reduction, probate fee and tax reduction. That's one financial benefit. You have asset protection, and then you have one that's kind of a financial benefit, but it's also includes other things, which is control. So fee and tax reduction, asset protection, and control. Let's talk about fee and tax reduction first. And this is what I think most people think of when they think of an estate plan. They think of, how do I reduce my probate fees or avoid probate altogether? And how do I reduce my taxes? And again, if you just have a will versus a true estate plan, and I'm not even sure if I like the way I wrote that, because it's not either or. A will is a form of an estate plan, but if you just have a will, you're not going to avoid probate, and you're not going to avoid any taxes that would come along. With an estate plan, you can do that. But again, I want to emphasize that a will is at least some type of an estate plan. But you're not going to avoid fees and tax reduction unless you have an estate plan that usually includes some type of a trust. It could be an irrevocable trust. Most likely it's an irrevocable trust, or what some people call a living trust. And because of that, you can actually reduce the fees on the settlement of your estate plan. You also create privacy, which I think for a lot of us is very important these days. In fact, I'm from a town in Connecticut. I live in Connecticut, and I could go down to our town hall, and our probate court, I should say, and I can look up whoever died without a trust, whoever died with just a will or no will at all, and I can find out exactly what they owned, where they owned it, exactly what they owned. It's not very private, and in this day and age, people want privacy. So again, fee reduction and tax reduction, but also with an estate plan with a proper living trust and so on, I can reduce my fees. I may be able to reduce my taxes depending on the type of estate planning or trust I set up, but I can also create privacy. Very important. Asset protection. Let's talk about asset protection for just a minute. So the biggest risks people face to their assets in retirement are liabilities, like lawsuits if you got in a car accident or somebody slips and falls on your property. or long-term care. And through a good estate plan, you can get some asset protection. Let's talk about long-term care for a minute. Last time I saw some stats, and I'm doing this by memory, but I'm pretty sure about 50% of couples, let's say I have a couple, two individuals, 65 years old, there's a 50% chance that one of them will end up in a nursing home. I don't need to tell you how much it costs to be in a nursing home. Depending on where you are in the country, it could be anywhere $10,000 to $15,000 per month to be in a nursing home. That can go through retirement assets very, very quickly. So through a good estate plan, you can create some asset protection around nursing homes. You can do some legal strategies to protect against nursing homes, to maybe gift some money or protect some money through proper legal strategies. You can buy long-term care insurance. Again, all part of an estate plan so we can protect some of those assets. Another big part of asset protection is, as I mentioned earlier, liability insurance. Again, from a car accident, and you might be a great driver, but let's say you loan your car to a grandson or granddaughter. I say grandsons because, let's face it, boys are worse drivers than girls. But let's say you loan your car to a grandson and he goes out and gets in a car accident, and who are they going to sue? They're not going to sue him, they're going to sue you because you own the car and you probably have more assets. Again, proper estate plan, you can protect some of those assets. And how would we protect assets from liabilities? With an umbrella policy. Everybody should have an umbrella insurance policy. It takes over, it sort of creates an umbrella over your home and auto insurance so that if there's a big lawsuit, let's say a $3 million lawsuit, your homeowners and auto are not going to cover that. An umbrella policy will cover that. So I recommend everybody have an umbrella policy. So we've talked about fee and tax reduction through some trusts and so on. Doesn't have to be complicated. Asset protection, protecting ourselves from nursing home, protecting ourselves from additional liability. Control is one that a lot of our clients like the most. In fact, I'll ask you a question. How many of you moms love your kids? Probably all of you, right? How many of you love the people they married? Not so much. So how would you like to know that you can protect your assets, the inheritance that your children get, from the spouses should there be some type of a divorce situation or something like that? Well, you can do that. Through a proper estate planning, you can control those things. You can protect your assets so they stay in your bloodline. What if you have a child that spends money in a way that's not congruent with your particular values? You can create control so they're not able to blow money. I talk about my one son, and great kid, very responsible with money, but he also loves to spend money. And I say this, and hopefully it's a joke, but before the dirt is on my coffin, there's going to be a BMW in the driveway. So if you want to avoid that, you can create control through a proper estate plan. So again, we're talking about some wills, we're talking about irrevocable trusts, possibly revocable trusts, different types of tools that can create this. And again, these are why we should have a estate plan. We're not going too deep into details about exactly what it says, but again, you protect from probate fees and tax reduction, and you get tax reduction, you can get asset protection, and you can have control over the way your money is spent. Think of it as control from the grave. Now, one of the things I'm also not mentioning or not spending much time on here that's really, really important is, what if there's a situation where there's a stroke, there's some type of an injury where the person does not die, or maybe it's just dementia and so on. A good estate plan can provide for the management of your estate if you're unable to make those types of decisions. And this is so critical in this day and age, again, where we're all living longer, and there might be a situation like a dementia situation where somebody needs to care for that person's finances, decide where money is spent, be sort of a guard against money being spent in a poor way, or maybe that person making poor decisions. So these are all important financial benefits of estate planning. And again, this is why I recommend you have a little bit more of a detailed estate plan than just a will. And for some of you that have done a good job saving money, you need to have a much more detailed estate planning that probably involves some trusts, maybe some gifting while you're alive to make sure you've protected some assets. Let's talk about the emotional benefits, okay? And I talked a little bit about emotional benefit with that control, just knowing that you have the peace of mind that your money is not going to be spent in a way that's inconsistent with your values. But also it can reduce family drama. It's really unfortunate, but you have probably seen situations where mom or dad die and the heirs, typically the direct descendants of mom or dad end up with some type of a squabble, some type of a dispute. Or let's say, one person wants to inherit the beach house but can't afford to keep the beach house, and they expect the other siblings to pay for that, and just all kinds of things that can go on, little collectibles that get fought over and so on. So a good estate plan can reduce a lot of that family drama. Also, if you think about what happens with family drama, many times there's one person that's in charge of executing the estate plan, right? An executor, a trustee. And other siblings can, quite frankly, be upset. There can be all kinds of infighting and so on. And so when you have a trust that's very explicit in the way that things should be carried out, that trustee just says, hey, I'm just following the rules. So you can reduce a lot of family value, a lot of family drama. You can express your values through a good estate plan. And one of the things that I think is so important, that at least I feel, is that my children know what my values are when it comes to money. When it comes to a lot of things, but quite frankly, when it comes to money. I want my kids and my grandkids to know the certain respect, the certain value, the habits I've had around money, because I think they can learn a lot from that, and I think they can learn a lot more from myself and Wendy than they can from just reading books and so on, because we want our values to continue on. So that's something an estate plan can do, and of course it reduces the burden on the family. You can remove some of those very difficult decisions. Do I want to be kept alive on a machine indefinitely? We can put that into an estate plan, so there's no doubt what mom or dad wished to do. How about something like difficult decisions that a family would have to make, whether it's to sell a piece of property and so on. We can take away those decisions. Another thing is, you can make a list. It doesn't have to be part of a formal estate plan, but you can make a list of all the little things that you own. I have a collection of guitars. I have a lot of cars because I like cars. I can decide where I want those things. Those things wouldn't necessarily be caught up in a formal estate plan, but I can make a little list and say who wants what. So it's really important, in my opinion, that you have more than just a will. If you have assets, if you have heirs, I think you ought to have a better estate plan that probably includes some trusts, probably gives you some control, gives you some asset protection, and reduces your fees and creates privacy. If you've liked this video, please subscribe. You will enjoy the other videos in this series on this channel. Also, make sure you click on the little red bell and you'll get notifications when we upload more videos to this channel.